I am Voltaire, the mind that defied kings and gods. I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. The world into which I was born was dark, shackled in superstition, weighed down by the tyranny of kings and priests. To speak the truth was dangerous. To think freely was to risk imprisonment, exile, even death. But I was Voltaire, a name that would shake thrones, rattle the church, and light the fire of reason in the hearts of men. They tried to silence me, but I laughed in their faces. I mocked kings, exposed hypocrites, and battled ignorance with my pen. If the world was a prison of blind obedience, I would forge the key of reason and unlock the chains. This is my story. I was born François-Marie Arouet on November 21st, 1694, in the heart of Paris. My father, a well-off notary, dreamed of me becoming a respectable lawyer. But I was never meant for the quiet life of a bureaucrat. From childhood, I was drawn to words, wit, and rebellion. I studied under the Jesuits at the College Louis-le-Grand, where I devoured Latin and Greek, read Homer, Virgil, and Cicero, and more importantly, learned the power of satire. The Jesuits taught me to think, but they also taught me what I most despised: blind obedience. Even as a boy, I mocked authority. I saw the hypocrisy of the church, the corruption of the aristocracy, the idiocy of absolute monarchy. And I wrote about it boldly, sharply, fearlessly. My father despaired. I was too clever for my own good. And in a world where kings and priests ruled, clever men often found themselves in prison. By the age of 21, I had already offended the wrong people. I wrote scathing poems mocking the regent, Philippe d'Orleans. It was all in good fun, or so I thought. But those in power have no sense of humor. In 1717, I was thrown into the Bastille, that cursed fortress where free thinkers rotted behind stone walls. For 11 months, I was a prisoner. Did I despair? No. I wrote. It was in that cell that I composed my first great tragedy, Oedipe, and more importantly, I took a new name, Voltaire. Voltaire was sharper than François-Marie Arouet. Voltaire was fearless. Voltaire was ready to take on the world. When I was released, I became the most celebrated playwright in France. My wit, my elegance, my charm. I dazzled salons and theaters, rubbing shoulders with nobles and intellectuals. But I could not keep my tongue in check. When I insulted the Chevalier de Rohan, a nobleman with more power than brains, he had me beaten in the street and thrown back into prison. I had had enough. I chose exile over imprisonment. I fled to England. In England, I found a world unlike anything I had known. Here, men were free to think, to speak, to challenge kings and priests. Here, Newton's laws ruled, not divine right. Here, Locke, Bacon, and Shakespeare filled men's minds, not blind dogma. I studied science, philosophy, politics. I saw that England, though still flawed, was a land of progress. I asked myself, why must France be enslaved to ignorance? When I returned to Paris, I had changed. I would not just entertain, I would enlighten. I wrote my letters on England, praising British freedom, scientific thought, and constitutional government, while ridiculing the French monarchy and church. The book was banned. I was forced to flee once more. I found refuge in Lorraine, in the chateau of Emily du Châtelet, the most brilliant woman of our time. She was more than my lover. She was my intellectual equal, a mathematician, a scientist, a philosopher. Together, we studied Newton, Leibniz, and the mysteries of the universe. I refined my ideas, sharpened my wit, and crafted my greatest works. But tragedy struck. In 1749, Emily died in childbirth. The light of my life was extinguished. I could not remain in France. My enemies were growing stronger, and I needed an escape. Then came an invitation from a king. Frederick of Prussia, a monarch who admired reason, summoned me to his court. He called me the philosopher king, and I hoped, for a time, that he was the ruler the Enlightenment had longed for. But kings are kings, and power corrupts even the cleverest minds. I saw in Frederick the same arrogance, the same thirst for conquest, the same vanity that I had fought against my entire life. When I mocked him, he turned against me. I fled Prussia, barely escaping imprisonment once again. Where could I go? France était me. England had grown weary of me. Prussia had betrayed me, so I built my own kingdom of the mind in Ferney, near the Swiss border. There, I wrote the books that would change the world. There, I fought against injustice, against religious persecution, against cruelty and ignorance. I wrote Candide, my savage satire of optimism. I wrote Philosophical Dictionary, attacking religious dogma. I wrote letters that reached every corner of Europe, sparking revolutions of thought. When innocent men were condemned by the church, I fought for their freedom. When kings silenced their critics, I sharpened my pen like a sword. And in the end, I won. In 1778, after nearly 20 years in exile, I returned to Paris. I was old, frail, but victorious. As I entered the city, crowds lined the streets, cheering my name. The Academy crowned me in glory. Theaters performed my plays. The people embraced me as a hero. I had outlived my enemies. The church, the monarchy, the censors, they had tried to destroy me, but I had destroyed them instead. On May 30th, 1778, I died at the age of 83. The priests refused to bury me, but I did not care. My words would live on, and they did. They called me dangerous, scandalous, subversive. They were right. I mocked kings, battled priests, and shook the foundations of dogma. I fought for tolerance, reason, and justice. And when the French Revolution erupted, when the monarchy fell, when the church lost its grip, I was there, not in body, but in spirit. I was Voltaire, and my ideas changed the world.